At my engagement party, my boss's daughter, just promoted over me, texted, "You're terminated." That's my gift. Don't contact HR. I showed my fiancé. He didn't flinch, he smiled. The next morning, I had 54 missed calls and a reason to hit back hard. If you told me a year ago that I'd walk away from everything I helped build, I would have laughed. I wasn't the kind of person who quit. I was the kind who fixed problems, ran point during disasters, stayed late, came early. But one message at my engagement party changed all of that, and now I understand something I didn't before. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to win. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Dr. Fallon Reyes. I'm 32 years old, and for almost 3 years, I worked as the lead cybersecurity systems architect at a firm in Austin, Texas called VaultSecure. If you're in the tech space, you've probably heard of them, known for building airtight digital fortresses for some of the biggest corporations and public sector clients. At least, that's how it used to be. When I joined VaultSecure, the place was still under the strong leadership of its founder and CEO, Richard Cross. He was old school but sharp, the kind of man who remembered your name and respected results. I wasn't hired because I looked impressive on paper, though my PhD in cyber defense didn't hurt. I was hired because I walked into my interview with a half-finished framework for a real-time threat detection system I had built in my spare time. Within 2 years, that system, what I ended up calling Fortress OS, was VaultSecure's backbone. It reduced internal breach attempts by over 70%, helped land 4 federal contracts, and made me one of the highest-paid engineers at the company. Richard used to say I was VaultSecure's best investment, and I believed him. But things changed fast. When Richard announced he was stepping away from day-to-day operations, I already knew who he'd put in charge. His daughter, Maddie Cross. She was 29, sharp-looking, always dressed like she had a photo shoot after lunch, and had a resume that read more like a startup buzzword bingo card than a tech leader's background. Maddie wasn't stupid. She just wasn't ready. Still, Richard made her vice president of cyber operations, which meant I now reported directly to her. At first, I tried to be cooperative. Genuinely. I offered to walk her through the core functions of Fortress OS. I even rescheduled the internal training programs to match her calendar. She canceled everyone. Then, slowly, she started cutting me out. Strategy meetings that I used to lead now happened without me. Emails I sent were forwarded by her with her name in the from line. I became a ghost in my own department. And then things got worse. She began rushing updates without security sign-off, removing redundant encryption layers from client builds, skipping audit trails. All to improve performance metrics and please shareholders. From the outside, VaultSecure looked leaner and faster. From the inside, I saw the cracks forming. That was when I met Micah. We crossed paths during a city contract VaultSecure had with the Austin Public Data Office. He was a compliance officer, calm, methodical, and serious. The kind of man who took his time reading logs others skimmed. He noticed inconsistencies in VaultSecure's backend reports. We started talking after a project wrap-up meeting, and those talks turned into dinners, then long walks, and eventually, something I didn't think I had time for, a relationship. Micah grounded me. I was so used to fighting for my place that I'd forgotten what peace felt like. A few months later, he proposed with a quiet kind of certainty, and I said yes, without hesitation. We planned a small engagement party, close friends, coworkers, nothing fancy. I wore a navy dress and my favorite earrings. The party was held at a downtown rooftop bar, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about work. Then my phone buzzed. I was in the middle of thanking one of Micah's coworkers for coming when I saw the preview text flash across my screen. At first, I thought it was a joke. "You're terminated. Consider it a pre-wedding cleanse. Don't contact HR." My blood ran cold. I stepped away from the guests and read it again. It was from Maddie. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at those words. I'd been cut out of my own system, fired by someone who barely understood how it worked. At my engagement party, I walked over to Micah and handed him the phone. He read the message, blinked once, and then said something I'll never forget. "She doesn't know what she just did." We left the party early. In the car, I couldn't stop replaying every meeting, every ignored warning, every cut corner she'd approved. Micah stayed quiet until we got home. Then he showed me his audit files. I've been watching her changes for a while, he told me. Not just mistakes, deliberate shortcuts, violations, risky stuff. I've documented everything. That night, my voicemail filled up with messages from Richard Cross. His voice was shaking. Maddie wasn't authorized to fire you. No one else understands your system. Clients are locked out. We're losing them. Please, Fallon. Please come back. But something in me had already shifted. For the first time, I saw my value not just as a worker, but as the architect of something no one else could recreate. I didn't need to go back. I could build something better. I didn't answer Richard's calls. I didn't reply to Maddie. Instead, I opened my laptop and started sketching ideas. A new company, a new system, one built with transparency and accountability at the center, and a name that carried weight, Rhea's Integrity Systems. By the time morning came, the plan was already forming. They fired me like I was disposable, but they forgot one thing. I built the fortress, and I still held the keys. The day after my engagement party, while most people were still sending congratulations, I was building a company from the ground up. I didn't even sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the balcony with my laptop, legs wrapped in a blanket, coffee in hand, while Micah quietly reviewed audit reports beside me. The sky turned from black to orange before I even realized it. That sunrise marked the end of my chapter with Volt Secure, and the beginning of something I hadn't planned for, but knew was necessary. I called it Rhea's Integrity Systems, a cybersecurity consulting firm focused solely on compliance, ethical protocol, and systems designed to catch the kind of shady shortcuts I knew Maddie had been making. I wasn't out for revenge. Not exactly. I just wanted to build something clean, something real. And if that meant forcing people like Maddie to answer to people like me, well, that felt right too. Micah helped me file the paperwork. We set up a modest home office and started small. Within a week, I reached out to one of my former clients, someone from the city of Austin's infrastructure tech division, and asked for a meeting. I didn't pitch them anything flashy. I just showed them how I'd redesign their review protocols, how I'd catch the holes that Volt Secure had left wide open under Maddie's improved performance. They signed the contract that same day. That first client was everything. It wasn't just money. It was momentum. Word spread faster than I expected. Other departments reached out. Then a private energy firm. Then a financial service group. One client at a time, Rhea's Integrity Systems became a quiet force. Meanwhile, I kept ignoring Richard's messages. The tone of his voicemails shifted with each passing day. At first, he was apologetic. Fallon, I had no idea she'd do something like this. I should have stepped in sooner. Then came the pleading. We're losing clients. No one knows how to manage your framework. Please, just come in for a few hours. Then came the offer. I'm prepared to pay you $150,000 to return and consult. Name your terms. But I didn't want their money. I wanted them to sit in the mess they made without me. Micah asked once if I was going to cave. I told him I wasn't. And I meant it. 3 weeks in, Volt Secure's federal contract, worth $40 million, was suspended. Turns out the government doesn't like it when you fail penetration tests 3 times in a row. Maddie had been approving updates with unpatched vulnerabilities, skipping encryption altogether in some cases. And when the auditors started digging deeper, it all came out. Richard tried to clean it up. He pushed Maddie out of the public eye. He told the board it was a leadership realignment. But by then, the damage was done. Volt Secure's stock nosedived. Clients fled. Richard reportedly suffered a mild stroke under the pressure, though I only heard that through a former coworker. As for Maddie, she was blacklisted. Not officially, of course, but no one was hiring a VP who got a government contract pulled. Her name became a warning. And while she slipped into silence, I kept building. One night, maybe 2 months into launching my firm, Micah and I were having dinner at home. Something simple, pasta and red wine. When he looked up from his plate and said, Do you think she regrets it? Maddie, I asked. He nodded. I thought about it for a moment. I don't think she regrets firing me. I think she regrets that it didn't work. That silence that followed was heavy but satisfying. I hadn't ruined Maddie. She'd done that to herself. All I did was walk away and build something stronger. By month 6, Reyes Integrity Systems had contracts with 3 city departments and 2 private corporations. We were a team of 6 by then, each one carefully hired, ethically trained, and fully aware of how our systems worked and why integrity mattered more than speed. I was finally creating the kind of company I'd always wished VoltSecure had been. Then, exactly 1 year after my firing, I received a letter. Not an email, not a voicemail. A thick cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered to my office. Inside was a handwritten note from Richard Cross. He wrote about mistakes, about blind spots, about watching everything crumble and realizing who had held it all together in the first place. He didn't try to make excuses for Maddie, though he did mention that she was completing a professional compliance program and working in a low-level data review position under supervision. It was a different tone from anything I'd seen before, less desperate, more humbled. At the end of the letter, he asked for a meeting. Not to ask you to return, he wrote, but to consult on what we've rebuilt. I want your eyes on it. I want your standards shaping the new VoltSecure. I sat with the letter for 3 days. Micah said, "You don't owe them anything." And I agreed. But curiosity isn't about owing. It's about closure. I scheduled the meeting the following week. When I arrived at VoltSecure's offices, I almost turned around. Everything looked familiar, but the energy was different, quieter, subdued. The receptionist was someone I didn't recognize. When she saw my name, she stood a little straighter and said, "Dr. Reyes, they're waiting for you." I was led to the conference room. The door was open. Inside sat Richard, and, to my surprise, Maddie. She didn't look like the woman who had fired me over text. Her blazer was simpler, her hair tied back, no flashy jewelry. She looked tired. Human. Richard stood. "Fallon, thank you for coming." Maddie didn't stand. She just looked up and said, "I'm sorry. For all of it." There were no excuses. No sugarcoating. She apologized for the betrayal, for the sabotage, for the firing. Her voice was low, but not rehearsed. Then Richard slid a folder across the table. Inside was a consultant offer, full access to their rebuilt systems, a flat fee of $150,000, and a symbolic reimbursement check, $12,400, the cost of my engagement party, down to the last detail. And on top of that, a small USB drive. "This is the original Fortress OS," Richard said. "It's yours. The company never claimed ownership after you left. We couldn't get it to work without you anyway." I stared at the drive. Micah once told me, "The best revenge is living well and watching them realize it." He was right. But this wasn't the end of the story. Because what they didn't know, what even I didn't know yet, was that another threat was rising in the background. One that would change everything again. I didn't give Richard my answer right away. I left the meeting with a folder in my hand, the check untouched, and the USB drive resting in my coat pocket like a ghost from the past. Part of me wanted to delete everything on it, wipe the code, erase every digital fingerprint I'd left behind. But another part of me knew better. The system I'd built wasn't just lines of code. It was a blueprint of who I had been, before betrayal, before the text, before the silence that followed. When I got home that night, Micah was already waiting. He didn't ask what happened. He just made tea and let me sit there in the quiet. Finally, I said, "They want me to come back as a consultant, not an employee, a partner, in name if not in shares." He nodded. "And what do you want?" "I want control," I replied. "If I go back in any capacity, I want my team to oversee compliance. Full transparency. No shortcuts. And Maddie answers to us. Not the other way around." Micah leaned back in his chair. "Then don't ask for permission. Lay down terms." That night, I drafted my proposal. Not a return to VoltSecure, but a partnership. Reyes Integrity Systems would remain independent. They'd handle tech. We'd handle compliance, audit trails, and ethical reviews. We'd operate side by side, equal in value but distinct in function. I'd built something that worked. If they wanted in, they'd do it my way. I sent the proposal the next morning with a 24-hour expiration. If they hesitated, I'd take it as a no. Richard called me back 17 hours later. "The board has approved your terms," he said, "with one condition. They want a minimum 3-year partnership commitment with an optional 2-year extension, depending on performance." I agreed. And just like that, VoltSecure and Reyes Integrity Systems entered into one of the most unusual arrangements in the cybersecurity industry. And the most effective. The press caught wind of it a few weeks in. They called it the integrity model. A partnership where oversight wasn't just a department, it was a company in its own right. Clients who had left started to return. New ones followed. As for Maddie, she was quiet, reserved. She had been demoted to a junior analyst position, 5 levels below her former title. She didn't protest. Instead, she started showing up early, completing every training module my team assigned, no matter how tedious or technical. She sat through protocol reviews without a word. She took notes. I waited for the cracks, the fake apology, the attempt to push back. But none came. 3 months into the new model, I visited the field office early for an inspection. When I arrived at 7:15 a.m., Maddie was already there, clipboard in hand, personally checking logs against real-time scans. "You don't have to do that," I said. "That's the site manager's responsibility." She looked up. "I know, but I need to learn how all of it works. From the ground up. That's the only way I'll get better." I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, watching her, wondering if people like her could really change, or if she was just performing it long enough to regain her place. "Why did you do it?" I asked suddenly. She didn't pretend to misunderstand. "Fire you at the engagement party?" she said quietly. "Because I hated that you were right. About the risks. About the shortcuts. About how your system mattered more than anything I brought to the table. I thought if I got rid of you, I'd finally matter. But the second I hit send, I knew I'd made a mistake." "You thought you'd win?" "No," she admitted. "I thought I'd feel powerful. Instead, I watched everything fall apart." It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't even a real apology. But it was honest. "I would have been a good mentor," I said. She nodded. "I know that now." I didn't tell her she could earn it. I didn't offer forgiveness or friendship. But I walked her through that day's protocol anyway. I showed her what to look for, how to spot irregular logs, how to verify real-time scans against back-end submissions. And she listened. Closely. A month later, she passed our most advanced ethics and security certification with a perfect score. My team double-checked the exam twice, just to be sure. It wasn't a fluke. And just when things started settling into something steady, something productive, I got another alert. Not from VoltSecure. Not from Reyes. But from a federal advisory channel I was tapped into through our partnership with the city. A cybersecurity contractor, one of the private firms that had briefly replaced VoltSecure when I left, had just been flagged in a national investigation. The report was confidential, but the summary was clear. Intentional tampering of client-side infrastructure, concealed vulnerabilities, and undisclosed ransomware events. The firm had taken over VoltSecure's previous federal contract, the same one that had been pulled after my departure. Now that same firm was under federal investigation. I forwarded the summary to Micah without comment. He called me 10 minutes later. "You think this is connected to what Maddie started?" I didn't answer. Not right away. All I knew was this. If that firm went down, the contract would open up again. And this time, there'd be no competition. VoltSecure, under our partnership, was now fully compliant, fully secure, and fully staffed with people who actually knew what they were doing. The timing felt too perfect. Richard called me that night. "I assume you saw the report." I did. "We'd like to be ready if the contract reopens." "Of course," I said. "But I won't play politics." "Understood. Just be prepared." I hung up, then stared at the dark screen of my laptop. For the first time in a year, I realized something strange. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was power. The kind you earn. the kind you control. And I wasn't finished yet. When the investigation into the rival firm hit the national news, I wasn't surprised. The headlines were everywhere. Federal contractor under fire for data manipulation. Whistleblower exposes ransomware cover-up. The firm that had snatched the federal cybersecurity contract after my exit from Volt Secure was finally exposed for what they were: reckless, dishonest, and dangerous. Within days, the government pulled the contract. The project was frozen. Millions of dollars in infrastructure work came to a halt. Agencies scrambled to secure systems that had already been compromised. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. What I felt was clarity. This wasn't personal, it was structural. And I had the solution. We were ready. Richard contacted me the morning after the federal announcement. They'll be reviewing proposals again. We want Reyes Integrity Systems listed as the lead compliance arm. I assume that's already obvious, but I wanted to make it formal. And who's submitting the actual tech proposal? I asked. We are. But under the partnership umbrella. Volt Secure and Reyes, joint accountability. I thought for a second. Then, let's do something we haven't done before. Let's go public with it. You mean press? I mean full transparency, I said. We put out a joint statement. We tell the world how this partnership works. How we're building security frameworks that self-audit, that expose shortcuts, that train people to resist the urge to hide failure. Richard paused. That's bold. Good. It's time. Within 48 hours, we held a press conference. I stood beside Richard and delivered a message I knew every executive in the industry would feel in their bones. I spoke about ethics, accountability, and how betrayal nearly derailed a system that could have prevented national breaches. I didn't name Maddie. I didn't need to. The message was clear. Integrity is not optional. A week later, we were awarded the federal contract. The scope was massive. Dozens of agencies, millions in funding, 5 years of phased rollout. We assembled task forces. My team tripled in size. For the first time, I was running both the ethics framework and strategic oversight on a national level. It was everything I never planned for, but everything I had prepared for without realizing it. And through it all, Maddie kept showing up. She never once asked for a raise, a title, or recognition. She just worked. She submitted reports early. She corrected mistakes before anyone else saw them. She trained new hires on protocol she once ignored. I saw the change, not in what she said, but in how she acted when no one was watching. 6 months into the project, I got an unexpected visitor at my office, Raina, my former assistant from my early days at Volt Secure. She'd stayed with the company when I left and now worked under Richard's direct leadership. She walked in, closed the door, and said, "Richard wants to promote Maddie." I raised an eyebrow. "And he sent you to test my reaction?" "No," Raina smiled. "He asked me to tell you because he respects your instinct. He wants your honest opinion." I leaned back, thoughtful. She's earned a shot, but only if she proves she can lead outside the bubble. "What do you have in mind?" "There's a community panel next week, an open forum for agencies and residents to ask about the new national rollout. High pressure. Unfiltered. I want her to lead that session. Alone." Raina nodded. "I'll let him know." The day of the forum, I arrived early but stayed in the back. No one recognized me. That's how I wanted it. Maddie took the stage looking composed, but a little nervous. She didn't wear a suit or heels. Just slacks, a plain blouse, and her badge. She began simply. "My name is Madeline Cross. I used to believe that success meant getting ahead. Faster, louder, better. But I've learned that real success comes when you can stand in front of people you once failed and earn their trust back." There was a moment of silence in the room. Then hands went up. Hard questions came. People asked about system failures, delays, misuse of data, prior scandals. And she answered all of them. Clearly. Honestly. If she didn't know something, she said so. Let me take that back and follow up. Not defensive. Just real. When the event ended, people clapped. Not a standing ovation, but something better. Respect. I left before she could see me. Back at the office, I called Richard.
She did well, I said.
She did, he agreed. You can promote her.
She's ready.
But keep her grounded. Make her earn every step. That's the plan. Weeks passed, then months. The national rollout was ahead of schedule and under budget. Rhea's integrity systems received 2 ethics awards. Universities started reaching out to me to teach courses. I declined for now. One evening, Micah and I took a walk through downtown. It was quiet, the air cool, the city lights soft above us. You ever think about how far you've come? He asked. Sometimes, I said. It still doesn't feel real. He stopped walking. You were fired by text message. At your own engagement party. And now you oversee the security standards for half the country. I smiled. I guess that's what happens when you stop chasing revenge and start building something they can't tear down. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Maddie. Thank you for trusting me with that forum. I won't let you down. I stared at the screen for a moment, then replied, make sure you don't. Some chances don't come twice. I slipped the phone back in my pocket, took Micah's hand, and kept walking. So, if you've made it to the end of my story, maybe you're wondering how you'd react in my place. Would you fight? Burn it all down? Or walk away and build your own empire? For me, revenge didn't mean taking everything from them. It meant forcing them to see exactly who they lost and who I became without them. That was enough. More than enough.